So to conclude our conference today, I'm going to call upon Mr. Wilson Barehead just to set the stage for our theme speaker to give his concluding remarks. Wilson, please.
Good day. It's an awesome day. The reason why it's awesome is we're all alive. We're all loved by someone. We all got a smile on our face. It's a beautiful day. I just want to say that before I introduce the next speaker, I would just like to say thank you. Ishnish, michadi daha piwaginino. I'd just like to say, on behalf of my wife and myself, from the bottom of our hearts, we give you thanks for allowing us to enter your space. Each and every one of us have a personal space. And because of that personal space, we only allow people that we trust to come into that space. And we thank you for allowing us to be in that space with you. And I also like to say that, and this is one important lesson that I learned many years ago. And these were the words that the elder said to me. He said, Wilson, I know the Creator gave you gifts. God has given you gifts. The ability to see, the ability to feel with your heart, the ability to understand things with your mind. And those three things are important because those are the gifts that the Creator gave you. With those three things, it allows to awaken your spirit. So he said, take care of your spirit. And anytime you're invited to come somewhere, use those 4 gifts. But also remember, when you're driving home, there's 3 sides to a story. There's your side, there's his side, and then there's the truth. So hopefully, what we've been doing here in the last 3 days will set us on that path, that journey, that we will all be together, and we will work together. And that's the hardest thing in life, is to make something positive so beautiful. And it only takes a second to destroy, but it takes a lifetime to rebuild. And I think we're here to accept that challenge, or to accept that opportunity to do those things. And now I'm going to introduce our speaker. This young fella took a lot of time to understand who he is. And the reason why we know that is the way he speaks. And the energy that he puts in those words. A long time ago, they used to say, the old people, the visionaries, would sit and talk for hours, and no one would get tired. They'll all be enthusiastically listening to what the elder, the visionary, would say. And I think this young man fits that category as a visionary for his people. But as a visionary, you have a responsibility as well, too. And that's to share. That's to share what is most meaningful. And for us, we know that what is meaningful to us is the life that we live. And how we're going to use that life in this world. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask Miles Richardson, put your hands together. Give him a standing ovation.
Thank you very much to all of you in this Banff Men's Conference. I want to thank the organizers for a job really well done and for inviting me to participate here with you, even for a brief time. I'm not going to go on and on in my closing comments. We had a lot of time to talk and share and discuss some important concepts, and I feel really good leaving here of the time that I've spent here and getting to know you and some of you, I think, quite well. One way I always address my people is Haida loss in my own people's language, and it's just a formal salutation when you're beginning to speak, and all that means literally is good people. And that's how, amongst my own, that's how I like to address them, because it's really the goodness in which all of us have some degree of in us that we want to bring to the forefront and work together on. And I've really felt that here, and really felt a bond and a sense of optimism and even hope that we can make some substantial progress, all of us in this room, on working together on this project of building a better society, on building a better nation of Canada. You know, in my talk yesterday, I talked about our elders always holding on to, grasping the promise of Canada. And it is a wonderful promise, the thought of justice, the thought of tolerance, the thought of respecting each other and respecting the place that we all call home. It's worked wonderfully for a lot of people. It hasn't worked so well for the First Nations people. But you know, I think as the Pope said when he was talking about the third fundamental relationship that Christianity has left out of interpreting the scriptures, he was saying, let's not hang our head about it, let's not be negative about it, let's fix it. And I think that's the opportunity we have here in Canada, is to fix that relationship that each of us have with the rest of creation. And in doing so, we're going to go a long way toward fixing the relationship with Indigenous people. I want you to understand that Indigenous people aren't looking for a check or a bigger bulge in our pockets from having money in our wallet. Indigenous people want to be respected, as each of you do, for who you are. And Indigenous people want to be respected in our homes, in our homelands. Like I was saying yesterday, each of us are the living generation of ancient nations. And we're very aware that this is going to go on. We're going to be here for a long time yet to come. We may change, we may adapt, we may evolve, but we're going to be here. The Haida Nation and the Nakota people, the Nakota Nation, are going to be here for a long time into the future. So let's figure that out. How can we do that going forward from here? You know, we're not all prime ministers or important politicians or any of those things. So I'd hope that what the good work we've done here, the joining that we've done here, doesn't just fizzle out. I hope each of us finds a way to continue this good work and these good relations that we've begun. And in the workshops, many of you have acquired tools to do that. You know, you've heard about First Nations and Indigenous governance and what First Nations aspirations might be on moving forward on that. I'd say get to know your neighbors wherever you live. Get to know the First Nations in that area and their aspirations in that regard. That's gonna come. If you're addressing the issue we talked about yesterday of doing away with the Indian Act, this cancer in our relationship, that's going to come front and center when you have that discussion with anybody. What is the aspiration of the First Nation in that area to replace that? Would be a good piece of work. Another thing each of us could do is to learn about Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're all a part of that. They've completed the phase of hearing the experiences of residential school survivors, this horrific chapter of our collective history. Now we're going forward and figuring out ways of fixing those relationships. Listen, seek out your neighbors. Talk to other Canadians. Talk to your circles about supporting reconciliation and doing things that would help along that regard. You know, Stephen Capfrey invited me here. He's the founder of Canadians for a New Partnership. And we have a lot of Canadians who've joined that initiative. And it's a loose initiative. We don't have staff to do all kinds of projects. We clarify a vision that we want of Canada, and we share that with partners across the country and participate in their projects. We don't initiate any on our own. We just clarify that vision and do things like me standing here this morning, going out and speaking to that. So if you want to join Canadians for a New Partnership, you can go online and sign up and sign the declaration. It's about reconciliation. You could pay attention to the David Suzuki Foundation's initiative. Here I'm in my sales mode now. I'm on the board of directors of the David Suzuki Foundation, and we have the Blue Dot campaign to advocate for a constitutional amendment for the human right of Canadians, all Canadians, to clean air, water, and soil. Just meaning, to me, what that means is before somebody potentially pollutes air, water, and soil, they need to prove to the rest of us that it's within acceptable limits that our society is set for protecting those resources. As First Nations cultures have taught us right from the beginning of time, all the money in the world isn't gonna help us once we run out of water, clean water. You know, you only have to look south to California and see their growing panic there to see what that could do. Same with air and soil. That would be and you know, there's already 82 countries in the world who've done this, including France, Costa Rica, who put in place, Bolivia, who put in place this constitutional right to something we all take for granted. We think there's unlimited quantities of it here in Canada, but that's what we thought one time about trees too, and other things. So there's a lot of initiatives that each of us could undertake. And I know from our side, from the First Nation side, we've got to reach out too. And I know First Nations have, but we've got to reach out and spend time with our neighbors and explain who we are and get to know each other. one challenge for us is for each of us as individuals, is to be comfortable with this. To bring relating as Canadians and Indigenous people into our comfort zones. Make it automatic. One way we could do this is wherever you are, wherever you live, or wherever you travel, be aware of the First Nations territory that you're in. Does that sound unreasonable? You know, when somebody comes into your house, you want them to know it's your house. I mean, it's not much different than that. And yesterday I told the story of when the Haida Nation signed the land use protocol, the joint decision-making protocol with BC. And BC volunteered to legislate, and that it had been a sore point for ages. Our name, our ancient name for our islands, as their name. You know, that was a huge step forward. Just that recognition. When we talk about recognition, recognition can be as simple as that. And that is simple, but it's so meaningful. It legitimizes our people. It legitimizes our culture in the broader society. We don't need legitimizing amongst ourselves, but to build relations and to start that healing process, it's so important. And if you wanted to take it another step, and First Nations political leaders and many Canadian political leaders do this now, and each of you could do it if you felt so inclined, is when you do any public presentations or talk to people, formally acknowledge those people in their place. You know, yesterday when I opened, I acknowledged the Yitka Nakota people who have called this place home for thousands of years. And they've shared it with many other tribes who they've signed ancient and modern treaties with. Acknowledge that. You know, when somebody stands up, one of our guests stands up in Haida Gwaii and acknowledges us there, that's just a gesture of acknowledging good people. And it's important. So that changes the paradigm. That changes the tone and the nature of the relationship, and there's simple things to do. And if you have a chance to go talk to your neighboring communities and get involved in initiatives they're pursuing, you know, a big issue across this country with First Nations people who haven't had much of a hearing in the rest of society is murdered and missing women. You could offer to help in initiatives with that. You could help, I mean, most Indigenous communities have their own schools. You could help out in those schools in some, with whatever capacity you have. Man, I don't know, teach them how to play piano, or I don't know, what skills do you have? Whatever that takes. Anyway, all I'm saying is there's a lot of avenues to build on what we started here today going forward, and we're all going to be a better country for it. And I really believe, and it drives me every day. You know, there was one point, and it was when there was one time in my life when I was a young leader and couldn't see my way forward. I renounced my Canadian citizenship, and I was very serious about that. We were blockading the logging industry, and the judge this is the Chief Justice of BC's Supreme Court, had 10 of my elders in court, and he convicted them of contempt of court for stopping the logging companies. And he had sentenced them to 6 months in jail, but he gave them time to purge themselves. He said, if you say you're sorry, say you'll never do this again and you'll never return to that island, I'll consider suspending your sentences. And then he lectured them. And then he said, as Canadian citizens, he was invoking Canadians' respect for the rule of law. He's saying, as Canadian citizens, you have no right, and he was just nasty, to interfere with the logging permit of this company. And here I'm standing there. You know, we wouldn't hire lawyers because this was too big an issue to have somebody else speak for us. I had my Haida blanket on. I was our leader. I spoke for our people in court. And I couldn't square that. I could not square. And, you know, this was a man to be respected, Supreme Court Justice. If he's telling me, as if Canadian citizenship meant I couldn't stand and protect my responsibility, my Haida title, then something's got to give. And I knew that when my elders went to jail, the shit was just going to hit the fan. Who knows what's going to happen? So we had to make it clear. So when we come home, and what do? We make it clear that when we stand out there again, we're standing on Haida title, which is Canadian law demands that be addressed, and it's never been addressed. So you're not going to pull me under Canadian law, never having dealt with me satisfactorily, and oppress me on that basis. So we had to make clear, if you're going to throw us in jail or you're going to shoot us, you do it with us as Haida citizens. And if that's inconsistent with being a Canadian, you called it. That's why we did that. And then the story gets much better. You know, Canadians saw that hypocrisy. Canadians stood with us, protected that area, and now we're well on the road to reconciliation. And, you know, I was really honored in 2007 to accept an Order of Canada. You know, I've had awards offered to me before that I rejected because of that conundrum in my mind. So the sum total of that is I'm very proud to say I'm a Haida citizen and a Canadian citizen, and really strengthened to be working with all of you in building this nation we share and building it to its full potential. I hope in some way our paths cross again, and let's all keep our eye focused on this reconciliation project, and, you know, lock arms and put our shoulders to it where we need to. Again, I want to thank the Yitka Nakota people for welcoming us all here and helping us with the ceremonies to make sure we do this work in a good way. Hawa to all of you till we meet again.
Okay.